Scaling PCI DSS version 4 compliance, GRC-Driven success. Hello, I'm Shashi Karanam. I'm a security and compliance leader with a focus on turning compliance into a business enabler. My experience spans across key frameworks, PCI DSS, SOC 2, DoD, NIST, and ISO standards, where I worked with organizations to advance their security posture and drive business value. Walk me with my journey on the Embracing PCI DSS 4.0. And then I'll step into modular compliance and strategies for scaling compliance. And then I'll walk you through some practical approaches for implementing security controls required by 4.0. And I'll leave with a few key insights for your own compliance journey. Embracing 4.0. One of the primary reasons is it allows for flexibility. Beyond the defined approach, it also includes customized approach and also allows organizations with an hybrid approach where you could choose between defined approach for some of the controls and customized approach for some of the controls as applicable to your organization. Evolved control requirements. With the emerging threats, there is a need to ramp up on the control implementations and security posture for an organization. And some examples include WAF, or authenticated scannings, or script integrity. And also it promotes security as a continuous model, where continuous monitoring of the security controls and their effectiveness is expected. But beyond that, it also focuses on people and process as a continuous model where you establish roles and responsibilities on how you enable people and processes to meet these controls. Transitioning to PCI DSS 4.0. In our own journey, it had three key phases: understanding the change, planning, and implementation. The fundamentals of understanding the change was knowledge building. What is PCI 4.0? The types of changes and the timelines for the changes. And then conduct an impact analysis. Impact analysis to the business teams or the application teams, as well as the compliance operations. Which of the controls are heavy lifting in nature versus which of the controls that are easily adaptable. But an output from this phase is recognizing the adaptation that would be required for transition. Moving on to the next phase in this is planning, where you are planning for resources as well as the budget implications. But during this phase, it is critical and important to align with your internal stakeholders and ISAs that are internal to your organization, but also open up the conversations with the trusted partners like QSAs on how you want to plan for this change and ensure that you are in alignment with the guidance from the QSAs as well. A critical step in the planning is to conduct a gap assessment against the earlier controls versus the new controls and assess where the gaps or what the delta is for your organization. The next key phase is the implementation, where you engage all lines of business and open up the communication channels to the first line of business and the third line of business to partner on this implementation strategy, where you are working with a multitude of GRC functions and cybersecurity functions and engineering teams to plan for the control implementation. And the outcome of this is a pre-assessment to sample a set of systems that adapted to this change and qualify them for the actual assessment. In Q3 of 2023, Comcast obtained 2 service provider attestations in adherence to 4.0. And in Q1 of 2024, we obtained a level 1 merchant attestation in adherence to 4.0. How did we do it? What were the key success factors that enabled us to get there? Primary one being start early and planning early. And number 2 is defining the compliance baseline, where all the controls that are effective immediately for 4.0 were implemented by the organization. But just why stop there? Raise the bar. Any controls that are future dated for 2025 are also met by the organization where we were able to meet. And then pre-assess, gain the confidence by measuring the effectiveness of the controls that you implemented before qualifying them to the actual assessment. Insights for your own compliance journey. If you are attesting before March 2025, then prioritize implementing all of the controls required immediately and plan for the future dated controls. But if you're attesting after 2025, then fast track your compliance activities and where possible, look into customized approach. Looking ahead for us, we want to continue to partner with the industry to benchmark our own compliance posture and also gain insights on the best practices. Compliance is not a one-time project. It is an ongoing, continuous security model where we implement continuous monitoring practices and continuously evaluate. Let me set up the tone for modular compliance, right? Break the compliance into manageable parts that are reusable and repeatable so that it can help with scaling your compliance needs. What are some of the scalability drivers? They can be business-centric or they can be technology-centric, where the business and technology grows to adapt to the emerging needs of the business, and the technology stack gets implemented in accordance. In order to keep up with this, there are ways to optimize on scaling strategies. So prior to thinking about scaling, let's focus on foundational concepts for PCI DSS. That is, implementing key strategies required to manage the scope by using network segmentation and using technologies like P2PE, E2EE, or tokenization as applicable to how you manage your environment, and working with trusted partners and third-party solution providers to implement these. But not about just that. Even in terms of compliance operations, fine-tune and have a structure in terms of defining the data flows and data minimization and other required security controls. But change is the only constant. Have a process in place to identify the significant changes occur year over year in your environment and how those impact the compliance scope as well as compliance strategy for you. Once the foundational elements are implemented, look into defining the modular compliance. These are applicable to organizations of any scale, whether small scale or large scale. How do you do it? Make compliance business as usual. Embed compliance into the core of the business process by defining modular components. For example, let me talk about user access reviews. Define a process and have a tool in place to conduct an ongoing and continuous user access reviews. Let me pick another example. Configuration hardening. Deliver compliance as a code where you hardline your baseline against the compliance requirements or the compliance requirements. But how do you do that? Partner with all lines of business across the organization to advance the security maturity, but also the compliance as a priority. And when it comes to streamlining the compliance operations itself, think about automating at all possible places. Implement self-service tools for cross-functional collaboration across the organization. For example, deliver the scripts or implement the scripts for gathering the evidences, for analyzing the configuration files, or for evaluating the readiness of a significant change. If you're a large organization like us with multiple lines of business in scope for compliance, then think about streamlining compliance, right? Identify the shared services that are common across the lines of business or the multiple different assessments. So define a common controls framework, and the criteria for that is entity level controls or the shared services, security services that support multiple lines of business. And how do you achieve that? Is to achieve an independent attestation for the shared services or the common controls by having an attestation of compliance specific to those common controls and having a responsibility service provider metrics for those controls. What are the benefits of doing that? Is timeline benefits and scope reduction benefits for any downstream assessments that can benefit from the common controls attestation. At our organization, we identified all of the entity level controls and the shared security services and achieved a common controls attestation that directly supports our merchant assessments as well as service provider attestations. In addition to that, it also prepares us for scaling to additional acquisitions as required and into additional lines of business. Right? Now, I want to shift and present some best practices on control implementations. Right? The case of TRA 4.0 allows organizations to define control frequency as applicable to the organization in accordance with the risks faced by that organization. How do you structurally implement a TRA, right? PCI DSS allows or publish the guidance or the template for the TRA. But what goes into that template is of real importance. A discovery and analysis within your organization to identify the threats and vulnerabilities posed by your organization, and also assess the likelihood and impact of the occurrence, and if they were to become real, what is the impact to your organization? And from there, define your control objectives, control frequency, and align with different stakeholders on the risk rating and risk approval. And repeat this process annually to identify if there are any changes that needs to be accounted for. The next control I'm talking about is going to be the web application firewalls or the integrity of scripts. As required by 4.0, a practical approach for implementing this is align the stakeholders or influence the stakeholders on the compliance requirements and provide guidance on context on how implementing these controls advances the security posture overall. And then pick a technology that can satisfy both of these requirements. There are many technology providers there that can provide either one or both of those. Run a proof of concept, measure the effectiveness of the controls during that proof of concept, and finalize the solution you want to implement. But it is not only important to implement the control, but ensure the systems and technologies providing these controls also meet the security requirements for PCI DSS 4.0, such as, does the technology have the logging enabled? Does it have all of the best practices required by 4.0? And deploy it across the organization. The other security control that I'm going to talk about is authenticated scanning. 4.0 requires authenticated scanning, where organizations gain insights into vulnerabilities through authentication. So for 3.2.1, you would already be doing an authenticated or unauthenticated scanning. So the first and foremost step in this process is to identify the delta of where authenticated scanning is missing. And then, depending on the tool you use for achieving scanning, identify if the tool supports all of the systems that are not covered for authenticated scanning today. And then build a plan to onboard each of these systems to authenticated scanning. While doing that, a couple of challenges you might encounter is how to manage the credentials for authenticated scanning, or if there are any performance impacts because of that as part of the authenticated scanning. And overall, the end goal here is to reduce the gap from unauthenticated scanning to the number of systems that qualify to do authenticated scanning. And then justify any of the controls or any of the systems that don't satisfy the requirement. So what I really want to leave with you all is some key insights for your own compliance journey. Right. Start early and partner with trusted people, whether ISAs that are internal to your organization, QSAs, or beyond that, the security teams and the engineering teams. And finally, streamline compliance with a modular approach and benefit from assessing it once, but using it manually. Thank you.